If you've been watching the NALCS since week 1, you would have noticed that Lucian was a top tier pick in the first week for almost all teams. He was often banned first rotation, and it was all because of his Youmuu's Black Cleaver build that made him really strong in the early and mid game, which was seemingly impossible to stop even in the laning phase. Then 6.11 rolled around for weeks 2 and week 3, and Lucian seemingly dropped off the face of the earth. No team was really prioritizing him except for TSM, who are currently undefeated and have played Lucian in 13 out of 14 games. Now, there's obviously a reason for this, and I think I know why. It all starts in the preseason with the introduction of the randomness of dragons. Riot wants you to be able to fight at any time, and because of the randomness of the dragons, you really don't know what's going to spawn, and more specifically, at what times you're going to have to fight. So if the first dragon is an elder, or not an elder, but an ember dragon, the fire one, you're going to have to fight that, absolutely. But if the first one is wind, you're a little less likely to be incentivized to go fight for that. Yet with a champion like Lucian, no matter what the circumstance happens, you're always capable of fighting. Now, why is it that Lucian, unlike other AD carries, is capable of doing this? Well, it comes with the item build. That's the sole reason for it being. The Lucian item build of Youmuu's Ghostblade and Black Cleaver is consisted entirely out of longswords. If you think about that, that means that all his spells will scale harder, because AD carries don't have spells that scale off of critical chance, at least most of them don't. And he never has a power trough, because all the longswords combine very quickly into new items that are always constantly spiking. Which means that throughout the early and mid game, and honestly even towards the late game, he's always ready to fight and always at a stronger point than the other AD carry. Until, of course, the very, very late game. But for the most part, games are now over quickly, and you have to fight for a lot of the dragons early. So having a champion like Lucian prepares you for any circumstance possible, and you're always ready to go, which is similar to how TSM chose to play, as they have been vocal in the way that they play the game, which is always fighting. They're constantly looking for avenues to fight, and what better way to fight around the bottom lane if your AD carry is the one calling when to fight, especially if he's playing a champion like Lucian that can fight all the time, because he's always at his strongest point. He's always stronger than his counterpart. If you compare two AD carries, one with Infinity Edge and Hurricane, and the other one with Youmuu's and Black Cleaver, Youmuu's and Black Cleaver will win out every time. Especially because a build like that is so cost effective that in the early stages of the game, tanks and junglers are not going to have sufficient armor to not be totally shredded by the Black Cleaver, and squishies are going to lose that tiny percentage of armor that's going to make them take practically true damage. If you combine that with the added fact that Lucian is a mechanically intensive AD carry that allows ADs to truly shine and outplay everybody mechanically with the dashes, the ranges, the spell rotations, all sorts of things like that, it makes you wonder why Lucian isn't picked more. I'm sure that this following week he will be picked more, but another thing to add to that, to the itemization, is the fact that because most of his attack speed is coming from the Youmuu's, he can also afford to itemize cooldown reduction boots, which pays into more cooldown reduction, which is more spells, more fighting, and more importantly, he also gets lower time on his cooldowns, which makes him an even more slippery top AD carry in a meta that has so many champions that are movement reliant, such as Azirs, the Jaxes, the Rumbles, the Swains. Being able to kite out of all these situations is incredibly valuable, and he's a champion that doesn't necessarily have to avoid fighting even if his flash is down due to his incredible mobility. With the Youmuu's, the dashes, the culling, and the movement speed from the Black Cleaver, he's able to escape almost any situation or put himself in even tougher situations, because he also gets to have more HP because Black Cleaver builds into that. So you see where I'm going with this. This champion is a lot stronger than people give it credit for. And the reason why the title for this video is that Lucian Fights RNG is because, unlike all other AD carries, he doesn't rely on critical chance at all. By the time that Lucian has done his job, which is 2 to 3 items, he doesn't have any crit. yet he's dishing out more damage than crit AD carries. I think that you can trace back throughout the entirety of League of Legends and think to yourself, how do you master a champion? Well, a key thing about mastering a champion is playing the same builds over and over and over and testing them out in different situations as much as possible and understanding how strong you're going to be exactly at all these circumstances. But if you take a regular AD carry that builds Infinity Edge, it becomes incredibly difficult to understand just how strong you are because of the critical chance. If you crit somebody 4 times in a row, you're stronger than anybody else. But if you hit 0 crits, you're basically useless. All your items have gone to waste as they're focused on the Infinity Edge damage. Whereas if you take a Lucian, you know exactly how strong you are at exactly every item spike against your opponents, and you know everything about the champion in and out. Think about the best AD carries in the world, about who can truly master champions. The 3 ADs that come to my mind when you think of high mastery of a champion are Ezreal, Lucian, and Vayne. But what's so unique about all 3 of these champions is that, for the most part, most of them don't really care too much about critical chance. While Vayne in the late game certainly has a lot of physical damage and crit chance if she goes Infinity Edge, a lot of the times popular Vayne builds just involve the first item blade of the Ruined King, and oftentimes you'll see maybe a Yomu's Ghost Blade or just a lot more attack speed in forms of Zeal, but the damage is mostly coming from that early spike with the Blade of the Ruined King. Then you have a champion like Ezreal, who builds 0 critical chance, yet some of the best AD carries in the world are true masters at this guy. Why is that? Because you have absolutely no reliance on the fact that they have critical chance. This ties into the theme that RNG is not very good for the game, because it becomes very difficult not just to understand the game, but to master your own champion just from the nature of it. There's truly nothing you can do about it. Players that can skip that are always ready for anything and are a higher skill ceiling than champions that don't. So I think that's why Lucian's so strong right now. Coupled with the fact that his spike is so strong because Yomu's also offers attack speed, that with cheaper items that complete themselves sooner, even if he loses lane, he finds himself catching right back up as soon as items are completed, just because of how consistent his damage is. He helps his team with the Black Cleaver shred, and there's truly nothing to scoff at in terms of his damage, his mobility. I can't go on more about why Lucian is so strong, but in a world where RNG is king in determining games of triple Wind Dragon or the Blessed triple Fire, Lucian's really the only guy that's there to be stable and not falter to random chance.